Hey guys, this is Hemant from Edureka. Welcome to this session on AWS integration with DevOps. Today in this session, I'm going to teach you guys how you can integrate the DevOps tools on AWS, that is cloud, and use or create your own development lifecycle. Right? So for those of you who are from the development background, you'll be able to relate to how things happen in your company, and for people who are not from a development background or from people who are from a non-IT background, you will get to know how actually development happens in the real world. Right? So without wasting any time, let's move on and start with the agenda. And before that, guys, before starting on with the session, let's make this session as interactive as possible. So I would want you guys to put in all your queries, all your questions in the chat box. My team is here to help you out. They'll be answering all your queries. All right. So with that, let's start with the session with the agenda. So we'll start this session by discussing what is AWS and then move on to discuss what is DevOps. So for those of you who are new to this terminology, that is AWS and DevOps, I will give you a brief so that you know what we are going to basically discuss about today. And then we are going to move on to discuss the DevOps tools, the famous DevOps tools which are used in practice throughout the industry. All right, and by the end we'll be doing a hands-on wherein I'll be deploying servers on AWS, and then we'll be using those servers to basically build DevOps tools and then build the whole development lifecycle. All right, so guys, without wasting any time, let's start with the first topic of today's discussion, which is what is AWS. So what is AWS? So guys, for those of you who are new to the cloud computing technology, basically cloud computing is a technology which came into existence in somewhere around 2006. So basically cloud computing means when you don't want to use your own servers, that is you don't want to buy your own servers, you rent servers from a company which has a lot of servers. For example, say you have 2 servers of your own, right? And today you deploy a website on it, and tomorrow you feel you need one more server because the traffic on your website is humongous, right? So what you do is you buy one more server and you fit it into your server stack, and then your website works fine. But this process of buying a new server, installing everything on your new server, and then configuring it so that it will work with orchestration with the other 2 servers will take up a lot of configuration time, and of course it will put a hole in your pocket as well. So companies, they were in a continuous dilemma as to how to upgrade things when so much investment were to made in upgradation. So what happened was, in those times, AWS was a company which first took a step by saying, okay, let me buy those servers for you and you can rent those servers from me and use them as long as you want. So that basically means if you want a server today, you can just go simply to AWS, launch a server over there, and boom, you have a server that you can use, right? And the best thing about cloud computing or about AWS is that you can use your server, or you will be paying for your server as long as you use it. So if you use your server for say 2 hours, you'll be only paying for those 2 hours. Right? If you don't need your server after 6 hours, you don't have to pay after 6 hours. So there is a no commitment policy with cloud computing, which attracts a lot of customers to it. Now, why are we discussing this today is because most of the companies today are now shifting to the cloud world. So probably if you are working in a company and if you are a developer, you might have already experienced it, or if you still have your systems on-premise, maybe in the near future you're going to move your servers onto cloud, right? So because cloud is the next big thing. So it's already a big thing, but for people who have not moved to the cloud yet, they will be forced to move in the next few years. All right, and why are we learning in cloud computing about AWS is because AWS is at the top of the rank. AWS is the leader among all the cloud computing providers. All right, so this is a brief introduction about what AWS is. Now, when we talk about cloud computing, guys, cloud computing has a lot of services to offer in terms of compute, in terms of database, in terms of file system, in terms of networking, right? So basically they are just servers, but servers with different variety of tasks. So basically you can use a server for only database purposes. You will install MySQL on it and you will say, okay, so this is my database server. You can use your server just for testing purposes. You will say only, okay, I have a Selenium script on this, and I have my Docker containers on this, and I will just use it for testing servers. Alright, so this is the world of AWS where you have different servers which have been assigned different roles, correct? Today in this session, what we are going to do is we will be deploying a simple Linux server, and we'll be deploying a database server. And on these Linux servers, we'll be tagging these servers as different names. We'll be making a Jenkins master, we'll be making a Jenkins slave, and all of that. As we move along the session, you will understand. Now moving on, guys, let's talk about DevOps. Now, what is DevOps? Now, you understood what cloud computing is. You get servers, you deploy on those servers, and then you get your job done. But when we talk about DevOps, so DevOps is particularly limited to people who are in the development field, or who are in the testing field, or who are in the operations field. Alright, so as the name suggests, DevOps is basically a combination of developers and operations people, or the IT operation guys. So earlier, there used to be a wall between these two teams, because the end product which had to come was supposed to be from these two different teams. So we used to see, okay, so there are two different teams, but they're working on one single product, right? So why not combine these two teams? And this bridge between the developer teams and the operation teams is what is called DevOps. So with DevOps, you do continuous development, you do continuous testing, you do continuous integration, you do continuous deployment, and you do continuous monitoring. So DevOps is not a technology, it's a fashion, it's a revolution which has been bought in the coming years. And now it is basically a form of, it's a group of tools using which you implement the DevOps idea, or so you implement the DevOps idea using these tools. All right, so you have tools like Chef, you have tools like Puppet, you have Git, you have Jenkins, you have Splunk, you have SaltStack, you have Ansible. There are a lot of tools which are available to implement the DevOps idea. All right, moving on. Now, like I said, DevOps is the idea, and DevOps can be implemented using a host of tools. Now, what are those tools? Let's discuss them. So the first tool, which is, I guess, the most popular tool, is called Git. So Git is basically a version control system, which is a lifesaver for developers. So what Git does is, when you're working on a code, and you say you came up with a product, and that product is live right now, correct? And on that product, you now want to make some changes. So when you want to make those changes, you just make the changes in the code and you commit it to Git. Now what Git does is, it sees what are the changes in your new code, and what were the changes and how your old code looks, right? And it implements only those changes in your code. So there is no duplicacy in terms of files, there is nothing like that. What happens is, the new version of code now sits there in the Git repository, and now I can push the code and I can pull the code as well, right? Say there are three developers who are working on the same product, and all these three developers commit at the same time. So they'll be basically committing to a different branch, right? They'll be having three branches, and they'll be committing to those three branches, right? Now, I as an administrator, I as an operations person will say, okay, so I have these three branches. Now let me see which of these branches actually work, and whichever will work, whichever is the best, I will commit it to the master branch. And what is the master branch? The master branch is basically my main product, right? And this is what all Git is all about. So it comes under the process of continuous development when we say DevOps, right? The second tool which is there is called Docker. Now Docker is a very interesting tool, guys. Now Docker in itself is actually an operating system. Now what do I mean by that? So say in your Windows, you want to have the functionalities of Ubuntu. So all you have to do is you have to install Docker on your system, and you can download the Ubuntu Docker container. What that does is, it basically downloads the functionalities or the core functionalities of Ubuntu and deploys it inside your Windows environment. Then you can log into your Docker container, and you will be using it as if you were using your Ubuntu machine. All right. So say your Ubuntu machine is around 800 or 900 MB of setup, and after installation it comes around 2 GB or 2.5 GB. But an Ubuntu container is just around 150 MB. That's how small it is. And why is it used? Why is it something which has been included inside DevOps? Is because when you create applications, say you create your application on your computer, you have a Windows 7 8 GB system, and you say, okay, so this is the application, this will be working, this is working fine on my system. And what you do is you give it to your friend to actually see, okay, so how do you feel how my application is. Now when your friend runs it on his computer, that project never runs, because your project might have some dependencies, they might have some software dependencies, some library dependencies that is not there in your friend's computer. And also there could be things such as the version of your OS is different. For example, he will be using Windows 7 now. Might be that you created your application in Windows 7 and your friend might have Windows 10, right? So the operating system also changed. So there was an inconsistency before Docker that was there, or it was very difficult to replicate the environment in which the application was created, right? So they say there are 100 developers who are working in a company and they all are working on one single application. Now, if you want that application to work, you have to have an environment which is exactly the same as all the 100 developers who are working on the same application. And that is very hard to replicate. But with Docker, the thing is, as I said, you can download a container which will have the core functionalities of an operating system. You can import your project, or you can log into that container and create a project or upload your project, test the project over there. If your project runs in the Docker container, all you have to do is you have to take that container, put it in some other machine and run that container, and that will basically run your project as well, right? So this is what continuous deployment is, or this is how Docker is very helpful in the industry. All right, moving on, we have continuous testing. So there is a tool called Selenium. Now what Selenium does is, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with it. So if there is a website, I want to test that website, I can test it using Selenium. So how will I test it? Basically, if there are some inputs that I have to give. For example, I have to give something in the name tag, and I have to give something in the password field, and then I have to click on submit. And after that, an output will come, and I have to read that output and check whether that output is right or wrong, right? So one way of doing that is, you manually test it by deploying it on a server, and then you're checking whether your application is working or not. But you can still automate this process. And this automation is, you can implement this kind of automation using Selenium. So what you do is you program your Selenium in a way that, okay, so this would be my application. Over here you have to enter the details, click on submit, you will get this output. If this output matches what I have feeded in my program, the program execution is successful. If it's not, it's a failure, and hence you roll back, right? So this is how the whole things work. Now I'll give you a brief of how this whole process works in a minute. Let me explain you all the tools. The last and the final tool, which is the I'll say the father of all tools, is Jenkins. So what Jenkins does is, so we talked about different tools. We talked about Docker, we talked about Selenium, right? So what Jenkins does is it uses all these tools, or it integrates all these tools so that it works like an organism, right? So using Jenkins, you can control all these tools to do whatever you want, right? For example, you will pull your code from Git and you will deploy it on a server, right? Using maybe in a Docker container. So that is what Jenkins' job is. This is what Jenkins does. This is how Jenkins functions. So Jenkins basically integrates all the code, all the tools that you have in DevOps, and give you the functionality of one single organism. All right. So if you're not understanding if it's going above your head, how these tools are functioning, don't worry. In the next slide, everything will be clear to you. All right. So this is basically the development lifecycle program that you have, or the development lifecycle, how it actually works. So if there is a developer, he's working on some program, right? So what he will basically do is he will upload his code to Git, right? Once the code gets uploaded to Git, this code will then move on, and this code will be uploaded, or it will be pushed to Jenkins. Right, so there's a setting in Jenkins that you can do, that whenever there is a commit to Git, you can pull that code. All right, so once the code is pushed or is pulled by Jenkins, the code is then deployed on a server or inside a Docker container. All right. So once that code is deployed inside a Docker container, which will obviously be on a different server, on a different testing server, this application becomes live, right? This application is now ready to be tested. Now, Jenkins can also start the process of continuous testing. So once it is deployed, your code is now deployed, you can test this code by giving a simple command from Jenkins, and it will actually check whether that particular application, if it's a website, if that particular application is working or not. So it will give all the inputs that you have decided in your code, in your Selenium code. It will give those inputs. It will check for the output, and if the output matches the output that you have given in your code, it will say the test has passed. Now this in turn, it will give this message to Jenkins, and what Jenkins will do is it will deploy this particular code on a production server then. And once it's on a production server, your code becomes live, right? So all of these things, where from the time a person commits a code to Git, to the time it gets deployed on the testing server, to the time it gets tested, to the time it gets deployed on the production server, all of this, guys, happens automatically, right? And before DevOps came into existence, all of these things were done manually, right? A code was committed, then code was taken and then was deployed on the testing server. On the testing server, then there were testers who were testing it using Selenium, and then it was going on, and if everything went fine, it was moved or pushed to the production server, and then this is how things were. But now with DevOps into existence, all of this happens automatically, and now your code goes live on the production server automatically. Now once your code goes on the production server, you tend to monitor it, right? You give it to a particular audience. Say there are in India, or say you say, oh, this product is only available to the Indian audience. That is also possible. So what you do is you test your code, or you test your application on the Indian audience, and the Indian audience, if they look fine, or if they don't find any bug with your code, you deploy it, or you commit that code, or you give your product access to the whole world, right? And this part is what comes in the continuous monitoring part. So if there is a bug, in the you give it to your Indian audience, and they say, okay, so we are not liking the user experience, I find this functionality is not working, right? So what will happen is you will take that feedback will all come under the continuous monitoring part. You will give that feedback to the developer team, and the developer team will again develop the product. It will get tested, it will get deployed on the server using Docker, and then you will again test it for the functionalities, what the users were expecting. Is it done now, right? If it's done, it will get pushed to the production server. So this is a continuous cycle which goes on, and it has become possible using DevOps, because before this thing was not happening. We were not getting the feedback continuously. We were not able to upgrade our product continuously, because there were a number of factors which we were having in between. That we were having a lot of people who were taking code from one place and placing it to the other place, right? So now, because it is all automatic, it has become possible for people, for the developer teams and the operation teams, to actually work on this kind of thing, where they're taking continuous feedback and they're improving their applications, right? So this is how the whole development lifecycle actually works. Now what we are going to do is we are going to move on and do the hands-on part, right? So it is going to be very interesting now, because guys, I'm going to teach you all from scratch. So what we are going to do now is, let me quickly jump to my browser and open the AWS web page. So I hope you guys are able to see my browser now. So what I'll do is I'll go to aws.amazon.com, which is basically my AWS portal. I'll go into my accounts. I'll go into AWS Management Console. All right. Now the first thing that I want is servers, right? I want a testing server, I want a prod server, and I want a Jenkins server. So what I'll do is I'll deploy 3 servers now. Okay, so I'll go into EC2. Now guys, this is how my AWS console looks. Now for deploying servers, you have to use a service called EC2. So when you are in your AWS console, you just have to go to your EC2 section, and now over here you will be clicking on launch instance. So once you click on launch instance, now you will be choosing an operating system of your choice. So I'm comfortable with Linux, so I'll go ahead with an Ubuntu server. All right, then over here you will be choosing the kind of processor and the kind of RAM that you need, right? So since it's a demo, I think a 1 GB RAM and this particular processor, that is T2.micro, will work for me. So I'll select this kind of processor. And also for you guys, if you're new to AWS and you have just created your account on AWS, this particular instance is also free for people who are under the free tier, right? So if it's not been 1 year since you have created your AWS account, you can actually create this server for free, right? So it's a pretty cool thing which AWS has offered us. So once you click this configuration that you have chosen, you click on next, and then over here you just have to configure your networking details. I'll not be going much deeper into it. So we'll just click on review and launch, right? And now once you have reached this page, you can review all the settings that you have done and finally click on launch. Now over here you'll be asked for creating a key. So you have to create a private or public key, right? So you can create a new key. So I already have a key, so I'll just select the key that I have. Give me a second. All right, so let me create a new key. So I'll click on create a new key pair, and then let me name the key as Edureka, right? And let me click on download key pair. So this will basically download me the private key for me, and the public key will obviously be on the cloud. Now I'll click on launch instances. So once you click on launch instances, guys, your server is now being deployed and you have your file with you. This is basically your file that you'll be working with. All right. Moving further, now I can see my server that I'm deploying over here, that is on the AWS console. So this is the server that I've just launched. You can see it is still in the initialization phase, right? So what I can do is I can basically name the server as a Jenkins master. All right. Now I want 2 more servers just like this. So what I can do is I will select the server, I'll go to actions, launch more like this. So this basically means it will be launching more servers, right? And once it will have all the same configuration that I have had for my previous server. And what I'll do is I'll just click on launch. It'll ask me to select the key pair. So this is the key pair that I've already have, right? So I'll select it and I'll click on launch instances. All right, so this launches my second server. So let's go ahead and name this server as my testing server. All right. So this server is just being created. Let me name it as testing server. All right. Now I want 1 more server, which will be my prod server. So again, launch more like this. Launch this particular instance, acknowledge the key that you have, and click on launch. So this will launch your 3rd server. And you can name your server accordingly. So this will be basically my prod server. Alright, so all my 3 servers are now deployed. They're still in the initialization phase. So while they are being deployed, let me show you a small thing that you have to do once you have to log into your server, or if you want to connect to your server, right? So if you have an Ubuntu machine, which is a non-GUI machine, the way you can connect it is using a software called Putty. All right. So if you want to use Putty, guys, with AWS, you get the file extension as PEM. So the key that you got is of the PEM file extension. Now what you have to do is you have to convert it into PPK, because that is what Putty accepts, right? So for your server to connect to, or for you to connect to your server, you need a key file which is in the PPK extension. For that, you have to use a software called PuttyGen. So you can download it probably from the internet, And once you download it, your tool will basically look like this. So I'll just launch my PuttyGen server, let it launch, and then I'll show you how it actually looks. Alright, so this is how your PuttyGen actually looks like. Now all I have to do is I'll have to click on load, right? And then I have to choose the file that I've created, right? So it's edureka.pem. I click on that and I click on open. So it'll say it has successfully imported the foreign key. Now you have to save the private key from this. So I click on save private key. You can click on yes once that warning comes, and you let me save it on desktop and let me name it as Hemant_Edureka. All right, I'll click on save, and this will basically save my file on the desktop. Okay, so this is basically how you convert your file from PEM to PPK. The next step that I have to do is connecting to my server. So for that you have to connect using Putty, like I said. So this is how your Putty console looks like. So all you have to do is you have to enter your IP address over here, and once you have entered your IP address, you can connect to your server by specifying the key over here, which is you'll click on SSH, you'll click on auth, click on browse, select the key that you have. So my key's name is Hemant_Edureka. So let me select that. Right, here's my file. I'll select the file, I'll click on open, and let me give my IP address as well. So my IP address will go over here. So let me choose my IP address. So I want to log into my Jenkins master server right now. So here is the IP address for that. Right, so this is the public IP. Remember guys to always copy the public IP. Copy the public IP address, paste it here, and click on open. So it will ask you for the login. So any Ubuntu server that you launch in AWS, it is known as Ubuntu. Alright, you log into your server. Now the first thing that you have to do is you have to install Jenkins on your computer. And since Jenkins is a web-based tool, it's a GUI tool, the first thing you have to do is you have to install Apache, right? So first let us sudo update our computer. So we'll say sudo apt-get update. Right, this will basically update my computer. Now for Jenkins installation guys, you have all these commands. So first you update your computer, then you will be installing Apache. So let me install Apache now. So I'll be going to my terminal. Let me install Apache now. So this will install Apache on my system, which will basically help me to go to the web interface of my server. Right, so I can now basically host HTML websites on my computer or on my EC2 server. Once I've installed Apache, the next thing that I have to do is I have to add Jenkins key into my server. Why? Because if you go ahead and type apt-get install Jenkins, you'll not be able to do so. So first you have to add the connection key in your server. So this will add the key. It will give you a message called OK. Once you do that, now the next thing that you have to do is you have to update the repository where Jenkins is inside your repo directory. So this command will do that. All right. Once you've done that, the next thing that you have to do is update it. So let us update our server. Right, updated. Now let's install Jenkins. Alright, so this will install Jenkins on your system. Be a little patient, it will be over in like 30 seconds. Once it is, just go and go to your security settings, which is over here. Basically over here you have to specify the inbound rules. So let us specify the inbound rules. So we have HTTP. So basically for getting your Apache server, you have to click on HTTP, and who can access this HTTP port range. I want anyone to access it, so I'll click on add rule. And then for Jenkins by default is installed on 8080 port, and also since I'll be connecting two slaves to my Jenkins. I want all ports to be open. So what I do is I'll click on all TCP, which will basically open all the ports, and let us click on save. All right. So this has basically opened all the ports on my computer, and also the HTTP port is open. So let's go ahead and see if I can access my server. Right. So let us go ahead and copy the IP address. So I'll go back to the EC2 dashboard, and let me select my Jenkins master, which is this. Now let me copy the IP address and paste it here. Okay, so I can access the Apache page. Let me see if I can access the Jenkins server. All right, so there seems to be some problem. Let's see what the problem is. Okay, so we have had some errors over here. All right, not an issue. Let us try to do the same thing with some other server. So basically, maybe the Ubuntu server didn't deploy properly. This happens sometime. So what you can do is let me connect to any other server which I have created, and we'll name it as our Jenkins master. And for our testing, we might deploy some other server. All right. So let me go here. Alright, I'll choose the key and I'll click on open. Alright, let's click on open now. Alright, so let us install everything again for Jenkins. So first I have to update my system, so I'll do that. Once it's updated, now let me install Apache. Alright, so Apache is installed. Let me add the key. So guys, if you want, I can give you all these commands to work on. Probably after this session, you can give us your email IDs and we can pass on the code to you. All right, so now let's add the repo. All right, so this command is probably giving us some error. Let's try to resolve that. Alright, so I think it will work now. So there was some problem with the permissions, so I guess it should work now. Alright, let's try and install Jenkins now. Weird. Let's try some other region. This region particularly is not working with AWS. I don't know why. All right, so let's launch an Ubuntu server. Alright, so I have my first server running. So let us give it the name as Jenkins master. Let's try one more server, which is my testing server, right? Alright, now let's launch one more server. Alright, so let's configure our Jenkins first, right? So let's take the IP address from over here. Right, so this is my IP address. Let me paste it in my putty, get the keys. All right, let's hope for the best. Okay, so I'm in my server. Let's install Jenkins. So we'll first update it. All right, let's install Apache now. Awesome. Now let's add the key. Cool. Let's now add the repository to our update list. Awesome. It got added. Now let's update it. Okay, so I've imported all the Jenkins packages. Now let's install Jenkins. Alright, so there was a problem with the region, guys. So sometimes it happens that the network settings or the network parameters for that particular region are some different. So I preferably use Oregon. I was using North Virginia then, probably that was the reason that my Jenkins was not installing properly. But no worries, guys. So Jenkins is now being installed. And once it is installed, I will show you how you can configure Jenkins to actually connect with your slave, right? So let Jenkins install. We give it some time. All right. So let's try to connect to Jenkins now. So we'll basically go to Jenkins master, which is this. Let's go to this IP address. So right now it will not be connecting because I've not opened the ports. So for that you have to go to your wizard. You'll go to your wizard and you'll change the inbound settings. So basically I want to add an HTTP rule, and then I want to open all the ports for TCP. All right. Alright, once that is done, I'll come back to my server, I'll refresh this. So this will open my Apache page. Now let's try to Jenkins. Alright guys, give me a minute. I'll just troubleshoot this. Alright guys, so I think Jenkins is working now. So the problem was, again, I don't know, I entered the same commands, I just created a new server and it's working now. So let me show you the console guys. So over here I've entered these commands, okay, and right now I'm not getting any errors. So once you have installed Jenkins, all you have to do is you have to go to your IP address :8080 port and then hit enter, and this page will be you will be able to see this page, right? So once you're able to see this page guys, the next step that you want to do is adding the admin password. So you just copy this link. So basically it is there in this file. So what I'll do is I'll copy this link, I'll go here, I'll type in sudo cat. So cat basically will display all the contents of this file and hit enter. So this is the password for my Jenkins. So I'll copy this password, I'll paste it here, and I'll click on continue. Alright, so I'm very sorry guys, I know it has been a delay, but I promise you guys you will not regret what you learned today. Alright, so now you'll be able to see this screen wherein you have to customize Jenkins. Probably you can install any more plugins that you want. So you will click on install suggested plugins, right? So with this, all the plugins which are recommended for using Jenkins will be installed. So a folders plugin is being installed right now. Then a markup formatter will be installed. Then a build timeout, credentials binding, etc. All right. So let's give Jenkins the time and let it install, and then we'll move ahead. Okay, so while this is happening, let me show you the server that I'm trying to install Jenkins master on, right? So this is the server. So I'm basically installing it on the test server. This Jenkins master didn't work, it ditched me. So what I'll do is I'll just terminate this server as of now, and we'll deploy one more server later so that we can use it for testing purposes. All right, so this is the Jenkins server. So let me say Jenkins master 1 to this. I'll click on OK, and this is a server where I am running my Jenkins right now. Now if you go here, you can see that the plugin installation is still happening. Alright, so I've reached this page. So it asks for create first admin user. Let me enter the username as Edureka. Password will be Edureka. Let me confirm the password. My name would be this, so it's Hemant, and the email ID it's hemant@edureka.co. Alright, let's click on save and finish. Alright, so my Jenkins setup is complete now. Let's start using Jenkins. Alright, so now this is the console that you see guys. This is how your console will look like. The first thing that you have to do is you have to click on create new jobs, right? So once you click on create new jobs, that will basically deploy whatever you want to different servers or different commands. Your build commands will go over here. Alright, so before that, let us tweak Jenkins a bit. So the first thing that you would need to do is connect your Jenkins to your test server and your prod server. So for now, let's have the test server, right? So we'll click on launch instance and let us deploy a test server. So I'll click on the Ubuntu instance. I've selected, so the same thing again, just launch one more server and let us give us the deployment keys. Right, which are these. Acknowledge that we have these keys, and let's click on launch instances. Alright, so my test server is being deployed, and while that is being deployed, let me show you where you will add this test server. So basically you will have to go to manage Jenkins. Once you go to manage Jenkins, you'll have to go to your manage nodes. Alright, once you go to manage nodes, this is where you will be adding your nodes. Alright, so I'll have to click on new node. So once you click on new node, this is the screen that you see. You have to give your node some name. So let's give it the name as test-server. Alright, let's call it as a permanent agent. So you have to check this option and then you click on OK. So this basically gives me the screen where I have to enter the remote root directory where my files will be pulled on, right? So let us say there's a directory called Jenkins, where my all my stuff will be pulled into, right? And that is it. So the directory is Jenkins, and let's say the launch method would be via execution of command on the master. This looks good. Okay. All right. Now, if you want to connect your server through Java, so there's a thing called JNLP which you can do. So for that, you will have to install Java on your system as well. So let's install Java. So for that, you will basically type sudo apt get install default JDK, and this will basically install the Java for you, right? So default JDK is already installed. Let me see if I can get this option again. Okay, so that option might be visible once we connect our ports. So the first thing that you will be doing, guys, is you will be going to Jenkins. Okay, you will click on manage Jenkins. You will go to configure global security. Over here you have an option for agents. Just click on random and click on save. Once you do that, again go to manage nodes, right? Just add a new node, which is test, right? Just click on permanent agent, and now you have the option to via Jeff Web Start. So this is what you want, right? You will click on Java Web Start, and now you have to specify the remote root directly. So let us specify it as Jenkins/workspace. All right. So we have specified that, and that is it. That is all you have to do. You will click on save. All right. So this will deploy us a slave server for you. Now, for connecting your slave server with your deployed instance, all you have to do is first you have to go to your instance. So let us go inside an instance first, which is this, right? So let us name it as test server 1. All right. Now I'll be going to this IP address. So let me connect to this IP again using putty. So we'll open one more terminal and we'll connect to it using the AWS key. All right. So I'm in. Let me enter the login name, which is this. All right. So I'm in my server. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to update my server. So let me update my server, so server is updated. Next thing, I have to install Java. So let us install Java. So let me just simply copy the command, which is this. So we'll copy the command here. All right. So Java is installed. So once Java is installed, you would also need to install Docker on it. All right. So let us see how we can install Docker. So all right. So before installing Docker, let me show you how you can connect your server to your Jenkins instance. All right. So let this Java be set up. All right, so it's connected now. So you'll go back to your Jenkins page, which is here. All right. Once you are on your Jenkins page, you will click on your node that you have newly added. Just click on the node. And this is the command which will basically connect you to your instance. So first you have to download two files, which is agent.jar and this launch file. So I'll click on agent.jar. This will basically download the file. and then I will click here, right? So this has basically downloaded me the files, and now for adding these files to my server, all I have to do is I have to open an FTP connection to my server. So I can connect to my server using this IP address, which is here. Let me copy the IP address, paste it here. The username is Ubuntu, password is 22. Let's click on Quick Connect. All right. So I am in my Ubuntu machine right now, and these are all the files which are there in my home directory. Now what I want to do is I want to copy these files over there. So let us first rename these files to standard name, which is this, and let us name this file again as well. Right, so standard name is agent. Let us copy this command to our Ubuntu machine. All right, so this file is going. Let us copy the slave agent as well. Alright, so here's the file. Let us just drag and drop this file to my machine. Alright, so both these files have been gone, so the transfers are finished. Let us go ahead and open our server, which is here. Let's do an ls to see if our files can be listed. Alright, so I have both the files here. The first thing I'll be doing, guys, is I'll be running the Java command. Alright, so let us run the Java command which was listed over here. So I'll go here, I'll go to my terminal, I'll say sudo and then the Java command. I'll hit enter, and this basically just says now it's connected. So once it's connected, now your Jenkins is now connected to your server. So this will basically not move ahead. So all you have to do is you will click on your terminal, you'll click on duplicate session, you will get a new screen. Just log in to your machine again. All right, logged in, and now if you go here and check, you just have to refresh, and it says connected via JNLP agent, which basically means now your Jenkins is now connected to your slave. Now I have to configure my slave now. Now I want my test environment to be installed on my server. So the things that I need is I need the Docker environment, and also I need the browsers installed over here so that I can do the testing. Alright, so for that I will be installing Docker first. So to install Docker, the first thing that I have to do is I'll have to add the key. So let us add the key first. I'll go to my terminal, add the key, it says okay, awesome. Next thing that I have to do is add the repository to the source list. Done. Then let me update my machine now so that my list gets updated. So right now basically I'm installing Docker on my system, guys. Alright, so my list is updated. Now all I have to do is let me just check the cache. So for checking the cache, when you check the cache, you can be sure that your Docker entries are there. So as you can see, you have the Docker entries in my cache now. Now let's install Docker on your system. Alright, so in your system, just go here and install Docker. This will install Docker on your system and you're ready to go. Alright, once you install Docker, all the next step that you have to do is you have to install the browser so that your Selenium tests can run. Alright, so let's install Docker on your system now. You have the Chrome browser on your system. So this will install the Chrome browser, and after that you will install the Chrome driver, which basically Selenium uses. I'll be coming to Selenium. I'll be showing you how Selenium actually works. I'll be explaining you the code, but for now let this run and then we can install the Chrome driver again. Alright, a lot of files. Awesome. So Selenium is now installed. Sorry, your Chrome is now installed. All you have to do is install the Chrome driver now. So hit enter with this command, and the Chrome driver will be installed. Awesome. So now this machine is ready. The environment is ready. All you have to do is go inside your Jenkins and create a job to basically deploy your website. Now I didn't show you the website that you guys will be seeing, right? So let me show you the website that we'll be testing today. Right, so guys, this is basically the website that we'll be testing today. Right, so this is the website. Basically this is a very simple website. You'll be entering the username, you'll be entering the password. Let me enter the username, say as Hemant, and let me enter the password, say this. When I click on submit, this will basically enter all the details to a database which I have deployed on AWS, right? Where is that database? That database is a MySQL server. So let me show you that MySQL server. You'll go to your AWS management control, and there's a service called RDS. You will go inside RDS service. So RDS service is basically used for SQL servers, right? So whenever you're creating structured databases, you'll be using the SQL servers. And as you can see, I have one instance running over here, which is basically my database server. All right. So this is the MySQL server, which is running on AWS right now. And my website, which is here, which is running on a local host as of now, is connected to this database. All right. Now, all entries that I do over here is basically getting reflected over here, and it happens, right? So what basically happens is whatever username or the password that I'm entering here gets checked from the database. If it says it's a true entry, it says login succeeded. Otherwise, login fails. All right. So what now I'll be doing is I'll be showing you the Selenium code which is working on this, or through which I'll be testing this my website, right? So if everything goes fine, it will return a success message. In other cases, it will not, right? So let me show you how this test will actually run. So this is my Selenium script, guys. So let me explain you the code first. All right, so the first thing it does is it imports the Chrome driver. Since it will be working with the Chrome driver to check your system, and there's a new functionality in browsers these days. So basically there was a thing called Phantom.js first. So how Phantom.js used to help you was whenever you have non-GUI systems, that is whenever you don't have desktops on your machines, you install your you cannot test GUI applications on your machines, right? For example, when you're about to test a website and you have no GUI, it becomes very difficult for you to figure out how will you test a website on a non-GUI system, right? So because of that, there was a software called Phantom.js, and using Phantom.js, you can basically, even if you have a non-GUI machine, you could run a headless browser. A headless browser basically means it will run the browser in the background. There'll be no GUI, but on the website will still be running on that browser, and you can check whether your website is taking all the correct inputs or not, right? So there was a software called Phantom.js. There is a software actually called, but then Chrome and Firefox, both these browsers have now come up with their own headless versions. So before this, they didn't have any headless versions. That is, they needed a GUI to work, all right? And now with the headless versions in place, you can use the non-GUI versions to actually test your applications on non-GUI servers as well, right? So because most of the servers, most of the Linux servers, most of the Windows machines that you use as servers on cloud or anywhere, they don't have GUIs on them, because GUI in turn takes a lot of processing power, right? And we want to minimize the processing power on the basic needs, because you won't be using your server anytime more. For example, I'm using my Jenkins machine, right? But I'm not working on the terminal anymore. All configuration that has to be done can be done through my website. So I don't need that server anymore. And that is the reason GUIs are actually not, inbuiltly supported by servers. All right, so all those things aside, this is why you use the headless browser. So first it will print this line, hello, welcome to Edureka's YouTube live session, and then it will basically go to this website, which is localhost/blob. So basically this is the address for my localhost website that I've hosted on this particular system. After that, it will look in the website for an element called login. So that login element is basically this. This is the login element, that is a username. And then it will look for an element called password, right? So in the login element, it will be giving this input, which is Hemant. In the password, it will be giving this input, which is STF, which is just a random value. But the thing is, this value is actually included in my database. So whenever I click on login, it basically checks the database for these values, and it sends a success message. All right. So if the login succeeded message is matched with this, basically my test becomes a success. But if it is not matching this, so let me show you what happens in case my values are not matching. So what I'll do is basically I will change my code. Right, I'll go to my code, which is here, and let me tweak it a little bit so that deliberately I'll make some errors so that it doesn't work. Alright, so this is where it is basically being connected. So I'll change the address of my SQL server, which will basically make my website into not functioning. So I'll enter the username, I'll enter the password, I'll click on submit. Right, it gives me an error and it basically says login failed. So if login failed is not matching with successfully logged in, it will throw that the website deployment failed, and that is how it will not go to the prod server. So over here your testing basically failed, and this is what we wanted, right? So if your testing fails, you get this feedback through an email, or you get this feedback through an email, or you can also log into your Jenkins and see if your build has been successfully executed or not. And if it is not, you can actually pass on that feedback to your developers, and they will make the changes, they'll fix your code and again deploy it, which will again get deployed on your Jenkins, and then that is how the whole process works. All right. So basically there are two kind of messages that you will get: login failed and successfully logged in. All right, so let us come back to our Jenkins page now. All right, so this is what we intend to do. Basically we intend to upload this website on our test server using Jenkins and then test it automatically, right? So my Selenium script, what I'll be doing is this Selenium script, I will be clicking on my project, which is Selenium test. I will right click it, I will go to export, and then I will convert it into a runnable jar file. Once I convert it into a runnable jar file, all I have to do is I'll have to commit this runnable jar file into Git, and from Git I will run this jar file on my test server once my website is deployed, and my test server will then in turn run this website and check it against this jar, that is basically the Selenium script. And if it fails, it will give a failed message to Jenkins, which will stop everything, and if it passes, it will pass on the build to my prod server, and that is where my website will be hosted. All right, okay, so let's start with this now. So what I'll do is I'll go to my browser and let me refresh to check if my agent is still up and running. Yes, it is up and running. Now what I'll do is I will go back to list and I'll go back to dashboard, and let us create a new job. So let's name this job as git build. So it's git -build. All right, let's give it a freestyle project, and I'll click on OK. Awesome. So the project name is git build. Now the next thing that I have to do is I'll have to configure this job, what it has to do. Right, so the first thing is I have to give it the GitHub project link. So where are my website files going? So let me quickly show you where my website files are. So where my website files are basically on my GitHub. So let me go to my GitHub repo. All right, so this is my GitHub repo. It's basically in DevOps. All right, so I have three files. I have a folder called blob, I have a Docker file, and then I have a jar. So jar is basically my Selenium file. Then Docker file is where I'll be giving commands for the Docker to create a container, and blob is where I have all my my website files. So if I click on blob, you can see that this will list all the files that I have in my code. All right, let's go back. Awesome. So let me give you an overview of how the Docker container actually works, right? So the first thing that you can do is you can see if you have any images on your system. So I'll do sudo docker images. This basically tells you if you have any images on your system. So basically right now, I don't have any image on my test server, right? Also, if I try to go to my test server, let me go to my EC2 instance. This is my test server, right? So let me go to this IP address. You can see that I don't have anything on this IP address. I don't have any Apache installations on this server, nothing. Now let me show you the cool thing about Docker, guys. So first, what I'll do is I'll say sudo docker run, and then I'll say Ubuntu. So what will this do? This will basically download the Ubuntu container from the Docker repository, right? So as you can see, it's just a 50 MB file which is being downloaded, but in turn it's actually a Ubuntu OS which has just been downloaded. All right, so if you see the images, so it's sudo docker images. You can see the image is being listed here, right? You have the image ID, you have the container, and it's 123 MB. All right, this is all that is. Now the first thing that I'll be doing is let us run this container. So let us see if there are any running containers as of now. You can see there are no running containers. So let me run this container. So what I'll say is sudo docker run -it -d. So IT basically means you are deploying it in your terminal, and D basically means as a daemon, that is it will be keep on running in the background, right? So let us copy the image ID and paste it here and then run it. All right, so my Docker container is now running. So let us see if we can see the running container in our ps command. So yes, I have a container running. Let us go inside this container. So I'll say sudo docker exec -it and then the container ID, and I am in my container now. All right, so I have to add bash as well so that it runs in my terminal. All right, so I'm in my container right now, guys. Now once you are in your container, you're basically inside a new Ubuntu installation. The first thing that if I want my container to have the Apache installation, I can install Apache inside this container or inside this operating system, inside this small operating system, and map it to my current operating system. What that will do is that will basically give the Apache installation, or I can see the Apache installation over here. All right, let's see how that happens. So what I'll do is I'll basically say sudo apt get -qq install Apache. All right, so I'm already in hash. 1 second. So first we'll have to update the package. So let us do that. All right, so this will basically update the containers with the new libraries. So once the library is updated, guys, then you can go on and install Apache, and then you will be able to see your Apache web page over here. All right, so this seems to be taking some time. All right, awesome. So while it is being updated, guys, let me quickly show you the git build over here. All right, So once you are in your Jenkins job, you have to specify your Git URL over here. So you'll go to your Git repository. I'll go here, I'll copy this link, which is github.com/hr/devops.git. So this is basically my GitHub repository. I'll go here and paste it in the project URL. All right. Once I've done that, I'll see the source code management. Over here also I have to specify Git. I'll specify the link over here. All right. So this will basically tell Jenkins to pull the code from this particular GitHub repository. Once I've done that, I will go to build triggers, right? So build triggers, what I want to do is every time I commit to Git, I want it to run the job. So for that, you have to say GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM polling. So it will keep on checking GitHub for any new updations, right? And then you have to specify what you want to do when you are basically what you want to do with basically this code that you're pulling from Jenkins. All right. So over here you will be clicking on execute shell if you're using your Linux installation. So once you are in your execute shell, you'll be specifying all the commands that you want to run. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get the Docker container from the Docker Hub repository. So I've already created a container, guys, with Apache and PHP installed on it, right? So that container is called Ubuntu New. So if you want to see the Docker file, I can actually show you. So it's basically over here. Here it is. So let me show you the file. So this is the Docker file that will be basically pulling the Docker image from my Docker Hub, right? So it's my Docker image's name is hr/ubuntu new 1212. After that, it will add the blog folder, which is basically will be pulled from my GitHub repository into the directory /var/www/html of my Docker container. All right. Once it is pulled, or once it has been put, once my website is put into this particular directory, it will restart Apache in the foreground for that particular container, and then it will remove the index.html. So that is basically the default index.html page that you see for Apache, right? That I showed you for many installations that we did earlier, right? So this is the Docker file, guys. So now I'll be specifying the commands. So let us specify the commands. So these are the Jenkins commands that I'll be putting inside. So the first thing that I'll be doing is I'll be building the Docker file, right? So that Docker file where my blog folder will be copied, that file or that container or that image will be named as this, that is hr/new on my current test server. Once it is done, it will run the container and it will map it to port 80. So 80 is where your HTTP websites are hosted, or your HTTP port is taken from, right? So you'll be putting in this port number and you'll be running this particular container or this image that you have just pulled from your Docker Hub. Once your Docker is up and running and it has all if it has all the files in place, that is from the Docker file you have specified that your website will be in this particular folder, you will be copying the jar file, which is for your testing, on your home directory. All right. Once you copy it on your home directory, you will be running the command that is java-jar and final.jar. Once you run this file, your Selenium test will automatically begin. Right, so let's copy these commands on my Jenkins page. So I'll basically go to my Jenkins page, I'll paste the command and I'll click on save. So this basically will save these commands, and this will basically execute everything on my system once I click on build now, which is on which system I'm talking about, my test system over here. All right. So yeah, so as I was saying, if you want to run Apache on your system, all you have to do is you have to install Apache in this particular container, which is this, right? And once you install Apache in your system, you map it to port 80 as we are doing in this particular command that I just shown you, and you can see the website. Let me show you in the real Docker container how my website will actually look. Let us quickly delete this particular container that we have deploy it. So I'll say sudo docker kill, which is basically used to kill your container, and I'll hit enter, which will basically clear my container. So if I do sudo docker ps now, I can see there are no running containers right now. Cool. So let's go ahead and click on build now, right? So once I click on build now, it will pull the code from my GitHub repository. It will paste it into my test server. So let's do that. So I click on build now. All right, so my job is running now. All right, so once it says it is red, it basically means your job failed. So let us see what failed over here. So I can go to my console output to see what has failed. So it says sudo docker build, it failed because these problems. Okay, so the first thing I'll be doing is, guys, so I have to docker login over here. I forgot that. So let us see if there are any running containers. So basically it could not pull the container. That is the problem. So I'll say docker login, right? So I just have to sudo into this command. So sudo docker login. Cool. Enter the username for my Docker hub and then the password. Alright, so login succeeded. Now let's try to run this command again. Okay, so I'll go to back to project. I will click on build now. Let's see how this goes now. Okay. So basically it is not being able to pull from my Git repository. So let's check what the problem is. Alright, let's go to our job to see if our Git repo links have been properly given. So what I do is I'll go to GitHub. So it is going properly to my repo. So let's see where the problem is. So I'll go to configure. GitHub project URL is this. Source code management is this. Okay, it should basically work on trigger. Okay, this looks good as well. Awesome. So all of this looks fine. Let's click on save. Let's go to our build. Let's see what the problem is here. Okay. So let me see if my node is up and running right now. Okay, so I got where the problem is, guys. So what we'll do is I'll go back to manage Jenkins. So basically we have to tell where our job has to be, you know, where will it be actually going, or where will it actually has to be deployed. So let us specify it has to be done in test. So what I'll do is I'll go to Jenkins, I'll go to my job, and over here I'll go to configure. And here I'll specify where I want my uh, project to actually run. So I have to run it on test. So let us specify the test label. All right, let's click on save. All right, so this will basically now run my build on my test server. All right, I forgot that. So now let's click on build now and see if everything works fine. So it is being deployed. You can actually check the console output by going to your build and going to console output. Alright, so over here, as you can see, the container has been launched. Now it is running the Selenium test. So let us give it some time to run the Selenium test, and meanwhile I can show you that my website now will be deployed on this test server. So to see that, what we'll do is we'll go to the test server 1. Basically, let us see if all our inbound rules are in place. Okay, so let us add the HTTP rule, and let's open all the TCP ports as well, so that we can check the website. Alright, so if I go to the IP address of my server now, I'll basically be able to see the website that I've deployed on it. Right, so I'll select the test server 1. I'll go to the IP address, which is this. And as you can see, guys, this is the website that I have deployed from my Git to my test server through Jenkins, and I have updated the website inside a Docker container. So basically this test server does not have Apache on it, right? This test server does not have Apache on it. Inside the server I have one more operating system in terms of a container. Inside that container I have Apache installed, and that is where my website is being hosted from, right? And I can see my website over here. Now if I do a login from here, I'll be able to do that. So let me do a login. So as you can see, if I click on submit, it says login succeeded. All right, so let's check if my Selenium test is working now. All right, so it says Chrome failed to start abnormally. So basically this error guys come whenever there is a problem with the permissions. All right, but basically you got the idea that whenever you want to do any test, all you have to do is you have to specify your commands, your Jenkins command, in the your Selenium commands, your Docker commands, all commands that you want yourself to run on your server. You just specify it in the command section of Jenkins, which will basically deploy everything, right? And if you go back to our project, it's basically showing red because the test failed because the Chrome browser could not start. All right, so let's skip that part as of now. So once so as you can see, the website got deployed, and you can see the website over here. All you had to do was, if the Chrome browser had run, it would have opened this website in its headless browser. It would have entered my username and password over there, clicked on login, and then it would have checked whether it is saying login succeeded or login failed. If it was login succeeded, it would have given a success message to Jenkins. And once it gives the success message to Jenkins, the next thing that you can do is you will go to configure jobs, right? And you will come over here to add post build action. All right, you will come to add post build actions, and you will say build other projects. So when do we want to build other projects? Only when this build is stable, that is when the test case passes. I wanted to deploy another job. So another job would be another job, just the same job that we have created now, only with creating a Docker container and deploying the website inside that Docker container. Once I do that on my prod server as well, I would have that same website without the Selenium script command, and everything will be running fine. And also with this also I can add an email over here just by going to email notification. So I will just specify the recipients, And over here I can say send email for any unstable build. So whenever my build will fail, right, it can automatically send me an error message that your build has failed. All right, and I can specify the recipients over here that that will basically receive the message whenever the build will fail. Also, I can send it to separate individuals as well. So basically, if you add different users into Jenkins, it will be able to recognize who committed that particular code onto your GitHub, right? And once Jenkins sees, okay, so this is the guy who committed the code and the build broke, he can email that particular person that your build has failed on this particular server. All right, and then the developer can basically check, okay, so my build has failed, this is where my problem was. He can fix the code again, push it to Git, which will in turn trigger the job on Jenkins. Okay, so the next thing that you can do, the last thing probably that you can do, is you can configure your GitHub to automatically push commands into your Jenkins. How will you do that? So basically, wherever your repo is, you will go to settings. All right, you will go inside settings and you will go inside webhooks. Once you go inside webhooks, over here you will basically have to add a webhook. All right, so I have already added a webhook. All you have to do is, once you add a webhook, this is the page that you will see. All you have to do is you have to replace this IP address with the IP address of your Jenkins. So my Jenkins IP address is this. So I'll basically copy this IP address and I will paste it here. All right, so once I've pasted it, once this IP address is here, all I have to do is click on update webhook. And now whenever I would be committing a code to my GitHub repository, this particular GitHub repository, it will automatically trigger a build into my Jenkins, my Jenkins tool. So if you want to see that, let me push a command to my GitHub. So I'll go to my folder. So this is my folder, guys. So I'll git bash here. All right, now all I have to do is first I will say git add dot, which will basically add all the files to my git branch, right? Then I will say git commit -m, and then the message new commit. So this will basically give this commit a message. So this basically commits your files to your git branch, right, in your local git repository. All right, and then you have to say git push origin master. So once you click on this command, your code will basically be pushed to your GitHub repo, and once that happens, you can work with it. So right now everything is up to date. So let me make a change. Basically, let's say I want to change the background of my desktop of my website, right? So let me specify that. So let me change the desktop to this. So I'll edit this my website and I'll change the background to something like this, and let me see the git status now. So this will say that one file has changed. As you can see, it says index.php has been modified. So let us add this to my tree and let us commit this to the branch of my local repo, right? And let us push this to my origin, that is my GitHub repository. So I'll enter this command, and this will basically trigger a build over here, right? So let me close the Docker container that I have here. All right. So once it has pushed, when you refresh, you would see that. Let me update the webhook. All right, so my webhook has been updated now. So let us basically copy the command once again in my webhook. All right, this is the URL. Let's update it. All right, it's been updated. Now let us, if I click on redeliver, you can see that it will trigger a build over in my Jenkins. Okay, so there seems to be some problem with the webhook, but these are the settings that you have to do, guys. Once you do these settings, your Git hub will automatically get triggered with the build, and then you can go ahead and see your file in your Docker container and in turn on your IP address as well. All right, guys, so I know with this, let me end this session. So thank you guys for attending today's session and to bear with me. We got a lot of errors today, but probably we can simplify the process probably in the next video. So what we'll do is we will come back with a session wherein in our next session we plan to use the AWS services, right? So we use the DevOps tools which are available, the open source tools which are available in the market right now. In our next session, what we'll be doing is in AWS, there are some DevOps services which have been given by AWS which replicate or which imitate the DevOps tools. So we'll be using those services and we'll try to build a project around it, and we'll try to replicate the development lifecycle in that session. All right. So with that, guys, I'll take a leave from you. Thank you guys for attending today's session. I hope you guys learned something new today. Right. So probably in the next session, you won't see these many errors. All right. So sorry for that again. So have a good day ahead, and goodbye and happy learning.